And elect your voice, Mr. St. Paul Peterson.
It ain't warm like that in Minneapolis right now. I got news for it. Hey everybody, how you doing, NAMM? Let me hear you. Man, it's so good to be back here at NAMM at the Electro Voice booth. My name is Paul Peterson. Back 40 years ago this year, Prince dubbed me St. Paul as he put me in a band called The Family. And we're going to be celebrating that all year long, go out and play some concerts and having some fun. But this is my podcast called Music on the Run, and I've been so lucky to interview my current guest last year as well, because we have a lot to talk about. He and I have so much in common, and we need to continue where we left off. By the way, for my listeners at home who don't have any idea what the NAMM Show is, the NAMM Show is the National Association of Music Merchants, the largest music convention in the United States, not the world. I think the one in Germany is bigger than this one, but we have so much fun getting together. All the musicians come here, all the vendors come here. We get to see all the brand new gear that they're putting out. But most importantly for me, it is a hang where you get to see your fellow bass players, keyboard players, all the musicians. And it's the one time a year where we all come together in one spot to hear music. And oh yeah, my producer's going, how come we played a Funk Friday and you never talk about it? So that little bit of music that you heard right before I came up here, it's a series that I have that is almost 5 years in the running. It's called Funk Friday, and it came out of COVID. And I decided that since we couldn't play together, that I would organize, at first just my family and friends, to come together and play 1 minute's worth of music to put out on the internet, just to make the internet a little funkier, 1 minute at a time. So every single Friday from COVID until now, we are on the 254th consecutive episode of Funk Friday. And we are having a ball. We've had over 300 world-class musicians play on there. You saw guys from Daryl Hall's band on there. It's just been a great thing. So make sure you go check that out. It's on all of my social media. Go check out St. Paul Peterson on Instagram or on Facebook. But that's fun. Has anybody ever seen the Funk Friday series? Okay, good. Well, you should go check it out so you can tell your friends about it. All right. My next guest is from my hometown of Minneapolis. In tandem with Terry Lewis, they have had more number one hits than any other songwriting production duo in history. Ladies and gentlemen, 5-time Grammy Award winner, songwriting, and rock and roll Hall of Famer, my buddy Jimmy Jam.
Where went the music go? How are you, man?
I'm so good.
Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Woo!
Well, here we are again.
Here we are again.
So nice to have you. Gonna sit on the corner over there?
Where do you want me to be?
Well, come here.
You want me here? Okay.
Yeah, just because the camera.
Produce me.
I'm producing.
Yeah.
The cameras are aligned so we can
Produce me.
light it and see you later.
I love it. Perfect.
All right, we're gonna grab that. All right, we comfy?
Look at that. We're strategically.
We are watered up well.
Yes, we're
here.
watered up. Stay hydrated.
That's right. You have to do that at the NAMM Show.
You do.
How are you?
And
How
when
was
you get
your
older.
year, man? I haven't seen you for a minute.
Since last year here, probably.
That's
No,
exactly.
actually, no. I have seen you because
At the concert.
yes, I came and saw you there, and but I'm wonderful, man. I'm just blessed every day. I get to wake up every day, and I always thank the Lord for giving me another chance.
Hey,
I don't know what I'm going to do, but at least I'm getting another chance to do it.
you're on the right side of the sod.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Upright and breathing better than the other one.
That's
Yeah.
I'm telling you,
Thank
right. You, since our last conference, first of all, maybe not everybody knows how we know each other, so we should probably recap that. Jimmy and I are from Minneapolis. Jimmy's a couple years older than me. Just that's all. Yeah.
Couple dozen, probably.
No, not at all. So I think you're my brother Ricky's age. And
Yes.
so Minnesota is a very tight musical community. So we all knew about these guys. My family is a pretty musical family. So I think people knew about the Peterson family
Royalty.
as well.
His family is literally the royal family of Minneapolis
Oh,
music.
man.
The Peterson family. I'm telling you.
Thank you
Absolutely.
for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, so fast forward, I graduate from high school, I get a phone call. Actually, let me back up. You got fired from the Time.
Yes.
He was the keyboard player in the Time, right? Morris Day in the Time, but you know him as the Time then.
Thank you. For you old folks that remember.
And we'll get into that maybe a little bit later. So he got fired, and then I suppose not long after that, I got a phone call that said, hey, do you have an audition in the Time? I'm like, I do. What happened to Jimmy? And they're like, come and do this. So I ended up replacing him in the Time for Purple Rain and all that stuff. So that's our connection. And that was really about it for a very, very, very
Yes.
long period of time.
Yes.
Because you were a little busy.
Yeah.
You were doing a few minor things.
A few things here and there, a few
Yeah.
productions here and there, yeah.
And I was living my own life as well. And I guess in the last 4 or 5 years, you and I kind of struck up a friendship, and we started hanging out. You came to my gig,
Yep.
and then I did a session with your dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, is that 2 or 3 years ago?
3 years ago, I think.
Something like that.
Uh-huh.
So, and do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, so...
Because I want to talk about your dad, because you've been doing so much with your father this year, and it's a very important thing to me.
Yeah, so to give you a little background on my growing up, I mean, my dad, I always say was a musician. He still is a musician.
Yes, he is.
He's 97 years old. He still plays. He's a keyboard player. He still plays every week. He's got a weekly gig he does every week. But I remember when I was a kid and growing up in the house, there was always keyboards around the house and all that kind of stuff. But they got me a drum set when I was about 5 years old. And so I used to play the drums, and I used to learn all my dad's songs. And at one point in time, because he had gotten married and had me,
Yep.
he had said he was going to give up music and just raise his son and live a normal life. But he ended up doing a studio session and that I got to go to as a kid. And the record became a little bit of a kind of a regional hit back in the time. And so he wanted to go and tour. And I remember him and my mom would argue all the time about, you said you were going to give up music and whatever. And as a little kid, I'm going, give up music? Like that was like not even in my brain. So one day he went to work, his normal job, and he never came back. And I was probably 14 years old at that point, 14, 15 years old. And so, of course, me and my mom did our thing and, figured it out. So I then decided that I was going to drop out of high school to pursue music. And I thought my mom was going to kill me, right? And she said to me, okay, as long as I see you really working towards it, I'm okay. And I thought, wow, okay. So I was estranged from my father this whole time. And about 3 years ago, somebody said to me, do you think the reason that your mom let you pursue your dream is because she didn't let your dad pursue his? Wow. And I said, I need to rectify that. And around that same time, Paul had gone into the studio with my dad and just hit me, I think on Instagram. I think he just DM'd me and just said, hey, I'm with your dad. And I just said, how's he doing? He says, he sounds great. You've got a great song, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that basically lit the fuse, if you will, for us reconciling after 50 years apart. So this is the man that started that process.
You know what? There's nothing like family.
Right.
There's nothing like family. And if I played a tiniest role in that, I am just so honored. And the fun part for me is to watch you interact with your dad now.
Yeah.
So explain to these guys over the last year, their book came out. Talk a little bit about the book, what you've been doing with your dad to promote that.
So after, kind of the fuse was lit, as it happened, and I'm a big believer in God's plan. I really am.
Hey,
So as it happens,
I'm with you.
Yeah, and as it happened, that year at the Billboard Awards, they wanted to do a remote from Paisley Park with the Sounds of Blackness, doing Optimistic, which is a song we wrote, our favorite song we ever wrote. And so they asked would we come up and introduce it. And we hadn't been back to Paisley since Prince passed away. So it was, once again, it was just a kind of a spiritual thing to even be back in Paisley Park and then to have Sounds of Blackness there. And I remember I reached out at that point in time to the gentleman that was kind of managing my dad, and I just said, hey, I'd like to see my dad. And I actually had my son Max with me, who's here in the audience. Where's Max at? Is he there somewhere? You're always in the back hiding? Okay. I love Max. But Max is my guy. Max is my adventurous son. I have an adventurous son, and then I have a son that just kind of chills, right? Max is my adventurous son. So he said, yeah, let's go to Minneapolis. So we go to Minneapolis. So they arrange it so, I had a flight out, and they arranged it so I could go see my dad, but they said, if it's not going well, you have a flight to catch, you know? And if it goes well, then, you know, you'll get a chance to spend an hour with him or whatever. And so it went beautifully, is the only thing I can tell you. And what was so cool about it was, when I was a kid, I remember my dad was always the last one to leave a place, because he's going to take every picture and sign every autograph, and I'd always be yanking on him and going, come on, can we go? Do we have to say, you know? And he'd always say, you never know how far people have come to actually watch you or to meet you, and you have to give time to them, right? So now I fast forward with my son Max, and my dad is telling this story to Max, because Max is with me when we reunite, and I said, that's what my kids always say to me. Dad, do we always have to stick around and do every selfie and every? And I said, yes, we do, because you never know if I'm ever going to have a chance to meet these people again. So what I realized was all the lessons that I taught to my kids are the same lessons that my dad taught to me. So there was no resentment, there was no bitterness. I wanted to lift whatever guilt he probably felt from leaving. It wasn't whether I agreed or disagreed with the decision, but I understood it. And the very next day, I got a text from Andrea Swenson, who's the author of my dad's book. And she said, I see your dad every Tuesday. Would you come on Zoom and join us? And there was a book a while back called Tuesdays with Maury. Mm-hmm. It turned into that situation where every Tuesday on Zoom, she'd go to his house, put him on, and we'd reminisce, we'd talk about different stuff. And that's how the book evolved. And the book is called Deeper Blues. And it's really about his story, my story, us coming back together, and she being kind of the witness of that happening. Right. And it's a beautiful story that I think will resonate with everybody in different ways, because everybody has different relationships with their parents. Oh, yeah. But I think there's something in there for everybody. And it's, of course, framed in music, which is always the most beautiful frame that you can ever put anything in.
And there's a record that goes along with that, too.
There's an anthology record that Andrea put together also. It dates back to his very first song, which he played with a group called the Augie Garcia Quintet. And the funny thing about that song was they actually opened for Elvis. When Elvis came to Minnesota for the first time,
no kidding.
They opened for Elvis, and I remember the story is that Colonel Tom Parker like chased them off the stage because they had everybody way too riled up, like they were upsetting the headliner, you know, and so yeah, it was really cool. But it was called Hi Ho Silver was the name of the record. The flip side of the record was Going to Chicago, and my dad actually sang that song on the record. So this anthology album starts with Going to Chicago in 1955 as his first recording, and goes all the way up through your recording with him, Put the World Back Together.
Really?
Yes, yes. So it's basically kind of his whole life during the different eras that he made music. And it's absolutely a beautiful album, and once again, a way that we're connected.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
What a great thing for you to be connected with your pops again.
Yeah.
What a great example you're setting on the power of forgiveness on both of your parts.
Yeah.
And
I hope so.
I'm sure it's been cathartic for you. You know,
the
healing.
It has been. No, it's been very healing, but also because, you know, I felt like he never got the recognition that he deserved. I mean, when we think about the Minneapolis sound, you think about us, you think about the time, you think about Prince, all that kind of stuff. But there were the seeds that got planted way before us for us to even exist. And it's whether it's your family, the Peterson family, my dad, Cornbread, Prince's dad, who of course was
Right.
an amazing jazz player. We all came from something.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, in telling his story, it's about forgiveness, it's about all of those reconciliation, but it's also about telling the beautiful Minneapolis story that started way before people even recognized Purple Rain and that kind of stuff. There's such a beautiful story that came before that.
Yeah, I mean, your father, my mom,
Yeah.
Prince's father,
Yep.
they're all from that same sort of age group. I would be fascinated to find out if they ever crossed paths and worked together. I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't either.
You know,
But I don't
was
I don't
Andrea
know.
would know.
Andrea would know.
Swinson.
Andrea Swinson is amazing. And by the way, for those of you that are interested in the book, it's available on her website. But what's interesting is she's also written, she's part of the Grammy process this year for the, I can't remember if it's the Purple Rain 40th anniversary or one of those. Yeah, one of those historical albums, because she does historical albums, and she was kind of the Prince whisperer back in the day. Prince used to talk to her all the time. So anytime you see a reissue of a record, I think Sign of the Times, she might have done the liner notes for the Sign of the Times. She has a Prince book now, which is the 40th anniversary of Purple Rain. That's pretty amazing. And she also has a book that talks about, once again, the origins of kind of the Minneapolis sound, even before us. So she's pretty amazing, and you can get the album and the book on her website. It's pretty amazing.
Well, let's take it back just a little bit in time and go back to your time with Prince. And actually, let's take it a little after that.
Okay.
You said to me in our last interview that you didn't necessarily want to move on from the time.
Mm-mm.
You wanted to be in the time, still do this movie with Prince, and still do your production career. Just for those of you who don't know, he was producing the SOS band and got caught in a snowstorm in Atlanta. Is that right?
Yeah, that's totally right. And the funny thing is, snowstorm in Atlanta, whenever I say that to people that were around,
Yeah.
they will immediately go, oh, 83? Like they remember
Really?
that snowstorm. Yes.
But you said it was like a dusting.
83. It was so from, us Midwest folks, it was a dusting of snow, meaning you don't even need a shovel. It's just a broom, you just sweep it off. They closed the whole airport down when we were trying to get to the next time concert in San Antonio, Texas. And it was the worst day of our life, man. It was crazy. Funny thing now, though, with the way the weather patterns are,
Yeah.
it's just snowed in Atlanta like this past week. Right? I mean, so you never know. But yeah, that snowstorm changed our whole life. And Prince found out about it. Actually, at first, the funny thing about it,
Please.
Prince at first, he thought we had gone down to Atlanta to see some girls. So,
Well, maybe you did both.
yeah, exactly. Well, no, we didn't. It was all work when we were down there. But it was funny thing about that was, when he found out we missed the gig and all that, he said, "That's what you get for going down and seeing those girls."
Right.
And we just kind of went, "Ha ha, yeah, okay." But he had told us, "Don't produce any other bands." He had already told us that.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Why? Why did
he didn't want
you
us. What he said was he didn't want us to give away the time sound. And we, as producers, Terry and myself, we never wanted to do anything that even sounded like the time. Like he was a big Lindrum guy,
Yes.
right? We went to the 808 drum machine. We started with the different drum machine. We did a whole different thing because our thing was, we don't want to give away the time sound.
Right.
We want to do our own
Shoot
thing.
yourself in the foot.
Exactly. Yeah, we didn't want to do that. We were on the same page about that, and we really didn't want to give that sound away. But he didn't really understand that. But as in a very Hollywood way, literally the day we got fired, we were at Sunset Sound.
Yeah.
He fired us. We walked out of Sunset Sound. We went to a studio called Larrabee Sound. There was an engineer there named Steve Hodge. And we walked in the room, and he said, "What's wrong with you guys?" And we said, "Oh, we just got fired from the time." And he said, "Oh." I said, "Well, I don't think you guys have anything to worry about." And he pressed play, and our SOS band record, Just Be Good to Me, came on with the Steve Hodge mix. And it ended up being, our first #1 record. And it totally changed our life. But literally in that moment, I mean, you couldn't write a Hollywood script where you literally get fired at this studio, and an hour later you go to this studio and make your first hit. And at that point, our production career was born. But it was born out of certainly the lessons that Prince taught us.
Yeah.
But also, as Terry likes to say, Prince didn't fire us, he freed us.
Right.
And literally, I think
You think he knew?
I think
he knew?
Well, he said, it was funny because he said to Jesse, "You'll never hear from those guys again."
Oh.
So I know he said that to Jesse, and I know at one point in time he threw, after we did Control, I remember he threw the record out the window at the house or something. You know, but eventually later on, we got to a really good place where I think he was really proud of us, as he should have been, because we don't exist really without him. And I think there was some of that, and I think it was funny because literally one of the last conversations that I was involved with him was he said, "If you produce me, how would we do it? How would it work?" And we said, well, first thing we're going to do is go back to the vault and grab all those 85, 84, 83, those songs that are just sitting in there. Let's start with those. And he loved that idea. And he was like, okay. So, of course, we never got a chance to make it happen. But Prince taught me, and this goes back to my father once again, he taught me to not leave things unsaid. Because when he passed, I felt like there were so many things I wanted to say to him that I never got a chance to say. So now I make sure I say things to people in the moment. And I even like social media. I love social media. I know people sometimes frown on it. But I love it because to me it gives me a chance to, when I hear something I like or I see somebody doing something I like, I can just DM them and go, "Hey, I love this. It's a great record," or whatever.
He did that to my daughter's boyfriend on a track. He went through the roof. "Oh my God, Jimmy Jam, God, you inspire so many people by taking that effort to do that." Continue on. I just had to throw in that personal.
No, I appreciate that, but when I hear things I like, I just think there's enough negativity in the world. I don't need to do that. You know, I don't need to be in that business. So my thing is, it takes just as much energy to do something negative, to write hate or to feel hate, as it does to feel love and to encourage people. And there's a couple of people I've reached out to that have been very interesting. One, I won't say his name, but a guy that just started a huge company, used to be at Apple, and now started a brand new company, $1 billion company, right? And I remember I was in Dubai or Abu Dhabi with some people, and I mentioned his name to them, and they each said, "Oh, he gave me a chance when this happened, and he gave me a chance when this happened." And so I just texted him, and I just said, "Hey, this is so random. I'm on a bus in Abu Dhabi, but there's people saying really nice things about you, just wanted to let you know." And he wrote me back and he just said, "You don't know how much I needed to hear that right now."
Mm-hmm.
Because this $1 billion company that he was funding was having some problems and there were some different things happening. And he said, you just never know when you send somebody that text of hello or just thinking about you or whatever that is, what that means to them in that moment. So I just try to make sure that I'm aware of that. Because I know how that feels for me when people hit me out of the blue. When you hit me out of the blue and just go, "Hey man, come back and do the show." Okay, great, let's do it. Those kinds of things are very important. So I just hope that everybody that's here today remembers that. Take a little positivity and make sure that person that means something to you or that song that you like or that musician that you like, when you see them, just let them know. It means a lot to them.
Or your old music teacher.
Yeah, or your
Reach
old
back
music
out to
teacher.
your old music teacher and go, "Thank you for everything that you
Yes.
poured into me."
Yeah.
Give the flowers while people are still alive.
Yeah, it's important to do that, and it's funny because I tell people all the time. Everybody knows I'm involved. I think people know I'm pretty involved with the Grammys every year, and this year's show is going to be amazing, and also pay tribute to the first responders and raise some funds for the LA fire. So it'll be a great show. But one of the things that happens, you know, as we're doing that and putting things together, is oh shoot! I totally forgot my train of thought. This is senior citizen moment right here. That's why I get my
right back after this
that's why I get my senior citizen discount now. I totally forgot. I had a great point too.
Did you?
Yeah.
My name is Paul.
Hey, how you
Nice
doing,
to see
man?
you.
Yeah, Jimmy Jam. Nice to
Jimmy.
see you, man.
Have we met?
Anyway, yeah, we have. Shoot, I can't remember what it was.
That's
anyway,
okay.
be nice.
I'm going to replay that. I'll sell that back to you.
I just remember what it was. I know what it was. So people, about the Recording Academy, people know us as a one night a year show. And one of the things when I was chairman of the Academy some 16, 17 years ago, I said we need to do a better job of the other 364 days a year.
Yes.
And Harvey Mason Jr., who is obviously a beautiful musician, songwriter, who is now our CEO of the Recording Academy, has kind of taken that under his wing. But I get people all the time thinking, how do I get involved? How do I give back? And I meet musicians all the time, and they go, I want to get involved and I want to do something. And I always go to your point, I go, where did you go to school? And they'll say so-and-so. I said, who's your teacher? And they'll say so-and-so. I said, are they still there? And they said, I think they're still there. Take your instrument to the school
Yes.
and sit in with the music class and just let them know. And then if you do that and let us know, then we're happy to amplify that message.
Right.
But you can do that. Each and every one of us can go out and do that and find that person that meant something to them and thank them and contribute to something that they're doing. And I think that's the beautiful kind of ecosystem that music does. So I think we have the chance to do that.
We do, and I call it being a light, in the
Yep.
darkness.
Yep.
If you can be that light, imagine if we were all that light,
Yep.
man, the world would be in a much better spot.
Well, let's intend to be. Let's be intentional about doing that if we can. It's not going to be like that every day. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have days you're pissed off or days, whatever. But if we at least have the intention, with the awareness and the intention of doing it, then I think we can do it. So
Let's go back. Let's give it up for that.
thanks and good night.
All right, we're going to an alternate reality right now.
Okay.
Okay? We're back in Atlanta. You make the plane. You make the gig. Right? We're talking about not getting fired now.
Oh
However,
no, we missed the gig.
I know you did, but
Okay,
I'm saying this
okay.
is the alternate reality.
Oh, okay. I see.
Right.
I see. Alternate reality.
Here's the alternate reality.
Okay.
You still have the SOS band, Just Be Good to Me.
Yes.
It comes out. It's a #1 hit.
Yep.
You didn't get fired.
Mm-hmm.
You're still in the time.
Yeah.
What do you think Prince would have done with the fact that you had a #1 there? You had mentioned that if he would allow it, he could have had this all underneath the purple umbrella.
Yes. And
do
that
you think you could have handled that?
we would have loved it.
You would have loved it.
We would have. I can only speak. I can't speak for how he would have felt about it, but I would have loved it because to me, back in the day, it was always, Motown was like the example of where there was all this talent under one roof and all these great writers and all these great producers and everybody was under one roof. And I felt like we had a chance to be almost like a Minneapolis Motown, where he already had the sound stage. He had Paisley Park happening, so he had the label, and we felt like we were making ourselves better by doing production and doing writing, not trying to do it in spite of or instead of the
Right.
time.
Right.
But we felt like improving ourselves was only going to make the whole better. And so I would have loved that. If you could imagine all of us, if you imagine the family and Sheila E.
Oh.
and all of these and the time still existing and all of these things under one roof, but then the SOS band and all the other things, the Sherelle Alexander O'Neill back in that day and all of those records we were
Yes.
doing, all under one roof, all coming out of Minneapolis as like a united front, almost the way Motown was with
Yeah.
Detroit. That would have been wonderful to me.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's ego or the competition, I guess is a better word.
Right.
Because he was competitive.
Very competitive.
But you all were competitive too.
Yeah.
I mean, in a
Sort of.
positive way, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you all did that to make each other better. It wasn't probably said,
Yeah.
but that's what happened.
Yeah, but right. The way I always looked at it was like this, though. There's competitors that want to be better than, and in doing the better than, they want to make somebody lesser than.
True.
Okay? I'm a believer in, I just want to do the best I possibly can. And if that's good enough, that's great. And that's the way I look at it. And so, for me, it was a positive thing. We wanted to kick Prince's ass.
And you
But-
often did.
But we wanted him to be great. Like if he had an off show, that really bothered us.
Yeah.
We were like, oh man, he ain't getting it tonight. We wanted him to have his best show and then still kick his ass if we can, or get our ass kicked by him,
Right.
which then put us back on the tour bus watching the video like, okay, what can we do better here? So I just think there's a difference. Once again, it's intent is the thing. We never wanted to make anybody smaller or lesser than, but we did want to be the best we could possibly be. So in that way, yes, competitive for sure.
That would have been a great alternative reality, though, to see that all happen. That
I
would
agree.
have been a different situation.
Yeah, I agree.
It really would have been. What did you take away from your time with Prince that you incorporated with you and, of course, Terry? Was it his musicality, did that have an influence on you? I'm sure it did, but songwriting, production style, or was it his work ethic? His work ethic.
Number one was work ethic.
Okay.
Was the thing we took away. And there's a story I tell, you might have heard it before, I'll try to tell it short. So when we were doing 777-9311, Prince came to the rehearsal and he watches us do the song. And when we're done, he goes, Jimmy Jam, what are you doing with your left hand? Because I'm just playing with my right hand. I'm just doubling Terry's bass part. That's all I was doing. He goes, do something with your other hand. And I said, it's not like that on the record, Prince. He said, it's got to be bigger than the record. Okay. So now I'm doubling Monty's part. So now I'm going boom, boom, boom. We go through it. We get done. He goes, Jimmy Jam, what note are you singing on the chorus? I said, well, it's a three-part harmony, Prince. They, Jesse and Monty and Terry, they got it. Find a note. It's got to be bigger than the record. Okay. So now I'm doing my part, boom, 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 and I'm doing 7, 7, 7, 93, 11, and I'm doing my part, right? Good. Song ends, Prince goes, Jimmy Jam, why aren't you doing the choreography? The choreography, Prince, I'm standing behind a keyboard, man. And he goes, it's simple, you should be able to do it. So I'm like, okay. So now I'm playing my part, I'm trying to sing my part, and I'm trying to do my little choreography. It's just a 4 corners, simple. I'm so frustrated. Practice ends. Next day we come back to practice. Prince walks in and goes, 777. And I'm like, oh, no. We start playing it, and about a minute into the song, I realize I'm playing my parts, I'm singing my note, and I'm hitting my steps. Mm-hmm. And then, not only am I doing that, now I'm taking a hanky out of my pocket and
got the whole bit.
I got the whole bit down, and what it made me realize was that the work ethic, but the fact that he saw me better than I saw myself. Yes. And that to me was the beauty of Prince. He saw everybody in an elevated way. And he outworked everybody. He'd rehearse us for 6 hours. He'd go rehearse the Revolution for 6 hours.
Yes, he would.
And then he'd come in the next day with a tape. He'd go to the studio all night. He'd walk in with a tape, with a cassette, and he'd put it in and he'd say, I did this last night. And he'd put it in and it would be like Lady Cab Driver or something. Right. And we'd be like, oh my God, So
it was unbelievable.
The lessons. And one funny lesson he taught us though.
Yeah.
So whenever he would record, he would always record with the needles all in the red, right? The VU meters were all in the red.
That was his sound.
That was the sound, right? So, and his theory on that was, he always wanted his records to sound loud. And whenever your ears hear distortion, they think that something's louder than it really is. So he wanted to always have a little distortion on the record, right? So when Terry and I got our own studio course, we're like recording, right? So we start doing the Control album. Right. And we engineer that album ourselves. And we got everything in the red, right? Right. So when we're done with the record, we call Steve Hodge. Steve Hodge comes to town to mix it. And he presses play. And he goes, who recorded this? And we said, we're patting ourselves on the back. Oh, we did. Yeah. He said, it's way too loud. We said, oh, yeah, that's the way Prince always did everything in the red. And he said, so the people that know audio will know what I'm talking about. On a VU meter, there's a 0, right? So 0 means 0. Our machines were set at what's called +6, where 0 meant you were already too loud anyway. And the fact that we're pinning the tape now is like just crazy. And I said to Steve, I said, can you save it? He said, yeah, it'll be fine. He said, I'm going to teach you all how to record the next album we do. Really? And the next album we did was Human League. So he did teach us how to record. So it all worked out good. But the point was, the reason the Control sounds the way it sounds was because of Prince's influence, even though we did it wrong.
Yeah.
But that's why those songs just leapt off the radio.
Yes, they did.
And to this day, kind of are this sonic, milestone. I talk to people all the time, that say that's the songs we use for reference to make our music, particularly the Swedish producers.
Is that right?
Max Martin and all those guys. Wow. They said the Backstreet Boys and the NSYNC guys all told us when they would go in the studio, they'd put on the Control record or the Rhythm Nation record, and they'd go, we want that synthesizer sound, or we want that whatever. Those were like the sounds. That's why the Swedish music is so funky. Because of
Man,
that, yeah.
you know, let's fast forward now. Obviously, you've done millions of interviews on all your stuff, all the great stuff that you've done for the last 40 years. I want to
Now
know
we're going
what
to do an interview on the bad stuff, on the terrible stuff. Let's switch it up.
Yeah, let's talk about all the crappy
All the crap,
records you
yeah.
made there, Jimmy. Don't you think that's a good idea?
Yeah.
I want to know what you're doing now and what are you looking forward to. You've reached every pinnacle, but you're not going anywhere. What's important to you today?
Yeah, I had a bucket list year last year, getting a chance to work with a lot of great artists. One of the people is, there's a group out of the UK called SAULT. I'm not sure, S-A-U-L-T, for those of you that are familiar. Those of you that aren't, please look them up. They're an amazing collective of musicians. But the leader of that group is Inflo. His name is Inflo. He did the Adele record and a bunch of other things. But I got a chance to work with him simply because I reached out to him a few years back. And when he came to LA, he said, hey, I'm going to be in LA for a month. We're going to be putting together some records, and you should come and hang out. And I basically spent a month in the studio with him. We worked on Michael Kiwanuka, we worked on Cleo Soul, who's his wife. We worked on all these projects, and the Michael Kiwanuka album is out now. But I was simply a session musician. I got to play organ on stuff, and which I hadn't got to do in a long time. So that was great. So I look forward to doing more of that kind of stuff. It's one of those things where people think, oh, you're too busy.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, I'm busy doing things I like to do with people I like to do them with.
Right.
So if somebody wants me to do something, I'm going in the studio next week with, or not next week,
With
but
me.
the week after. With, I hope so. Yeah, that sounds
That's
great.
good. That's coming.
But I'm going, yeah, that is definitely coming. But I'm going in with Charlie Puth. We're going to do some stuff together. Well, Charlie, when he did, not the last album, but the album before, I remember him saying in an interview, they said, what kind of album were you trying to make, Charlie Puth? And he said, I was trying to make a Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis album. And when he said that, I was like, really? And I reached out to him, and we've become really great friends now.
Yeah.
And so he's finishing an album now, and he's going to have a bunch of great people on it. And we're going to do some sessions in the coming weeks.
He's unbelievable.
He is
so talented.
He is like, I call him effortless genius. It looks like he's not really doing anything, but his sonic just emotions and the stuff that he gets. And he's so well, when you talk about things that we're into, one of the things we're doing this year is a Jam & Lewis documentary. And
Finally.
Yeah.
About time,
Well,
Jimmy.
it's God's timing, right?
Yep.
But we're doing this documentary, and it's interesting that Charlie Puth is one of the people that has sat for it.
Oh.
But Charlie didn't sit in a normal interview way like this. He sat at a piano, and then he literally played the influence and showed how the music we did influenced him. And it's a pretty beautiful moment in the documentary. And so we're working on that. But the cool thing is, in the middle of working on our documentary, Peter Afterman, who's the executive producer of our documentary, he said, who hasn't done, or who would you like to see in a music documentary that hasn't been done yet? And we said, Gamble and Huff. And he said, Gamble and Huff, why? And I said, because there would be no Jam & Lewis without Gamble and Huff.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Bell, because it's the Mighty Three, so those three guys. So if you remember the Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes and the OJs and Teddy Pendergrass and the Stylistics and the Spinners and the Delphonics and all of those groups, those three guys made all of those records. So when you hear, I love music, and you hear all those types of songs, they did all those records. Anyway, so now we're negotiating to direct their documentary.
Are you really?
And that it will become part of our documentary of us directing them. So that's for this year. Storytelling,
Yeah.
we want to do that, continue to do that, because we have a lot of stories, but there's others that need to be told. And the other side of it is live performance. We did 8 shows in Japan last year,
I saw that.
which was pretty amazing. And we basically did, think of Jam & Lewis like a virtual jukebox. And I think we did, in an hour and a half, I think we did like 70 songs, not whole songs, but parts of songs. I think we did like 70 songs or some crazy thing like that.
Medley heaven.
And it was medley heaven. And but we want to do that. We want to do festivals, and we want to do that kind of thing. And we also would like to do orchestral dates, because we think a lot of our music lends itself to orchestra stuff. So this year, I think 2025, we'll see in the documentary space, the storytelling space, the session space for me, which I'm really excited about.
Right.
And we also did some scoring last year for a show called Imprisoned that's on Hulu.
Based in Minneapolis.
Based in
I
Minneapolis.
finally got Hulu, man.
Did you?
Yeah, it was great. I'm finally listened to it. I'm like, oh, that's so cool that
Yeah.
you're doing that.
No, it was great. When we got asked to do it, it's Delroy Lindo and who's the young lady that's part of that? Kerry Washington. And they asked us to do it because they said it takes place in Minneapolis and we need somebody that understands what a Minneapolis soundtrack should sound like.
That would be you.
And it was a wonderful experience. We did 2 seasons of that show.
What was the learning curve for that? Was there?
It was crazy.
Curve?
It was a big learning curve because
Okay.
the learning curve for me was in the studio you used to come in with a finished song and you turn in a finished song.
Yeah.
In that, they show you a scene and they say, we need some music here. We were sending them like full songs and they were like, no. It can't cover the dialogue. It has to be like this. And we were like, oh, okay.
Right.
And so it was kind of a thing where we got it to where we could do different sounds for different characters. Kerry Washington's character was this kind of grown-up woman, but she was like a little girl because she had been estranged from her father because he was in prison.
Right.
So every time we did a sonic for her, it always involved something childlike, like bells or
Right.
something, right? To remind you that even though she's this grown woman, she's still affected by not having Christmas as a kid and those types of things, right? Delroy Lindo, because he's a big, cool guy, all of his sonics were all bass driven, like acoustic bass driven. So whenever you'd see him, there'd always be that element. When they were together, we'd combine the elements and so on and so forth.
Who told you about it?
We just,
Did you figure it out?
no, we had, so there was a girl named Yvette Lee Bowser,
Okay.
who's actually, she's a writer, and she wrote for the show. She's actually in the Writers Hall of Fame, whatever, for screenwriters, I'm not sure what it's called, but she's in that. And she's a friend, and she kind of walked us through. And I remember the first episode, we got notes, because they give you notes after they show it to the network, right?
What was that like getting notes
The
on your
first
music?
note, I swear to God, I had a legal pad that was totally full. It had so many, this softer here, louder here, more up tempo
Yeah.
here, right? That whole thing, right? I remember when we got to the end of season 1, which was an 8-episode season. Episode 8, they showed the episode, and when they asked everybody said, no notes. And I felt like I took my graduation, my
Right.
tassel, and moved it over.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was. In the second season, there were no notes from the studio. They totally got what we were trying to do musically with the show. So it was a great learning experience and something I hope to do more of.
Yeah.
Scoring. Because once again, it was something we had never done.
Right.
And I am into doing things that we haven't done yet because there's so many of them. And for us, scoring a TV show was one of them. We hadn't done it.
You're always learning. Right?
Absolutely, I love it. I wake up every day with something. I'm excited to learn from people, to meet people, to learn from people, tell stories. It's the best.
So fun to have you come to. I play in California once in a while.
Yeah.
At a place called Vibrato, and I have a band called St. Paul and the Minneapolis Funk All Stars, and that's kind of I think when you and I started
Yeah.
to get to know each other a little bit. When we finally got in touch, he asked, "Can I come down to the club?" And I'm like, "Jimmy, really? You want to come to see my little tiny band?" And he was there. And here's the thing about Jimmy. I don't know him well at this point. Dude stayed upstairs and grooved. I saw his fedora grooving the entire time. And these are songs, that he was a part of, songs that I was a part of, and this, like the journey of the Minneapolis sound is with the people who were there, who did it,
Yeah.
right, who created it, and that's what's fun for me. When he said that he stays after the show and takes every single picture and signs every single autograph, I beat him out of the club and I had to load out. This dude was signing autographs the entire time. It was amazing to watch that.
It was cool. By the way, that Club Vibrato,
Yeah.
owned by Herb Alpert's daughter.
Yes. Yeah.
So Herb
And
Alpert
you
is part
produced
of that.
Herb Alpert.
Yeah, produced Herb Alpert. So there you go. I mean, it's a very close circle here. A good circle.
Did I ever tell you that when I was being wooed away from the Prince camp, John McClane
Yes.
called me to produce Janet, which was a
Yes.
farce. That wasn't that really real.
Mhm.
He just wanted to get me in there. And one of the things he was showing to me to get me over to A&M Records, he introduced me to Herb Alpert.
Mhm.
And I went into Herb Alpert's office, and he was totally cool. And he said, I said, "You have a beautiful piano over there. Can I play it?" And I started playing his piano. He busted out his horn, and I thought I'd gone to heaven. And what a neat guy that he is.
He's the best. And he's touring this year with the Tijuana Brass.
Is
They're
that what
doing
he's doing
dates.
this
They're
year?
doing dates this year. They're in rehearsals right now for that. Because I talked to Eden the other day. That's what they're in rehearsals for right now.
Man, that's great.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Well, because I know you got to go, we're going to have to do a part 3 because we're still only scratching the surface. Tell these guys now, we talked a little bit about this last time. You look great.
Thank
You're
you.
feeling great.
Yeah.
How's that whole journey going for you? Everything is good?
It's going good. My doctor said to me one day when I went in for a checkup and I was about 100 and some pounds heavier than I am now. He said, "How's your kids?" And I said, "They're great." He says, "How's your grandkids?" I said, "I don't have any yet." And he said, "You want to be around to see them when you do?" I was like, "What does that mean?" He said, "Well, you're getting ready to be 60 years old." He said, "There's a good way to go into 60 and a bad way to go into 60. You're going in the bad way."
Yeah.
And, listen, through some medical science, through some psychological help,
Yep.
a lot of that, I was able to drop about 100 pounds or so. And hopefully I will be around. I don't know, Max is here with his girlfriend. I'm not sure. No grandkids yet, but keep hope alive.
Yeah.
So, never know.
My grandson turned 1 today.
Woo!
Yeah.
I love that.
I'm a grandpa.
I love it. I love it.
Jimmy, it is always fascinating to speak with you, and it's always so much fun just to get to know you a little bit better. I hope our paths continue to cross for years and years to come.
Me too.
I hope musically at some point our paths will cross.
That'll
We got to do
definitely
that before we check out.
Well, you're doing the family again now, right?
I am doing the family again. Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So get me involved in that.
Oh, I will for sure.
Okay.
Evie wants to thank you. We want to send you home with an RE20 black mic, and we will get that to you.
I love that.
So thank you, Evie, for giving that to Jimmy. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend Jimmy Jam Harris.
Give it up, everybody, one more time for Mr. St. Paul Peterson. Two legends in one place, Mr. Jimmy Jam